There is a moment when people decide how far they can go with you. It may happen in the first conversation, the first disagreement, the first time they interrupt you, mock you, ignore your boundary, or test your patience. And most people fail that test. They laugh when they are disrespected. They explain themselves when they should simply walk away. They give second chances before the first lesson has even been learned. Then they wonder why people continue to treat them badly. The truth is uncomfortable. People do not always respect what you say. They respect what your behavior teaches them. The first thing people learn about you is not what you say about yourself. It is what they discover they can make you feel. They may not consciously analyze it, but they observe it. They make a small joke at your expense and watch your face. They interrupt you and notice whether you continue speaking. They ignore your message and see whether you chase them for a response. They challenge your opinion and observe whether you become defensive. They push against your boundaries, not always because they hate you, but because human beings naturally test the limits of what is available to them. Every reaction teaches people something about the amount of control they possess over you. This is why emotional control is one of the most powerful forms of personal strength. When someone can insult you and instantly make you angry, they have found a button. When someone can ignore you and make you desperate for attention, they have found a weakness. When someone can provoke you into saying things you later regret, they have discovered that your emotions can be used against you. You may believe you are defending your dignity, but if another person can decide when you lose control, then they are still directing your behavior. The mistake most people make is believing that every provocation deserves an immediate response. They think silence means weakness. They think remaining calm means allowing someone to win. They believe they must answer every insult, correct every misunderstanding, and defend themselves against every accusation. But this is exactly how they surrender control. They allow another person to choose the subject, the timing, the emotional tone, and the direction of the interaction. The person who provokes becomes the director, while the person who reacts becomes the performer. Imagine someone makes a disrespectful comment in front of a group. The natural instinct is to respond immediately. You want to prove that you are not weak. You want to make sure everyone knows you will not tolerate being embarrassed. So you attack back, raise your voice, or deliver a long explanation. For a moment, you may feel powerful, but the other person has already achieved something. They have pulled you out of your natural state and forced you to behave according to their emotions. They pressed a button and you showed them exactly where it was. A controlled person does not need to respond at the speed of their anger. They allow a moment to pass. They observe. They ask themselves what the other person is trying to achieve. Is this a genuine disagreement, or is it a performance designed to provoke them? Is the person seeking understanding, or are they searching for a reaction? The answer determines the response. Not every attack deserves a battle. Not every insult deserves an explanation. Not every disrespectful person deserves access to your emotional energy. Sometimes the most powerful response is a calm look and a simple question. Was that necessary, or perhaps nothing at all? Silence can create a space in which the other person is forced to hear the ugliness of their own behavior. When you immediately react, you help them escape that discomfort by turning the attention toward your anger. Suddenly, the conversation is no longer about what they did. It becomes about how you responded. You have allowed them to change the subject from their behavior to your emotions. This is why people who want control often provoke others. They understand that anger makes people predictable. An angry person reveals information. They speak too much. They expose their insecurities. They make threats they cannot keep. They reveal what hurts them. They show exactly which subjects can disturb their peace. A calm person gives away far less. Their face reveals less. Their words are more deliberate. Their decisions are not made in the heat of the moment. This uncertainty makes them more difficult to manipulate. Emotional control does not mean becoming emotionless. It does not mean pretending that disrespect does not hurt. It means refusing to allow the emotion to make your decisions for you. You can feel anger without becoming its servant. You can feel disappointment without begging for an explanation. You can feel insulted without immediately trying to punish the person who insulted you. The emotion may arrive automatically, but your response remains your responsibility. The person who wants others to fear disrespecting them must first become difficult to provoke. If people know that one comment can ruin your entire day, they possess influence over you. If they know that ignoring you will make you chase them, they possess influence over you. If they know that threatening to leave will make you surrender your standards, they possess influence over you. But when your emotional state becomes your own territory, people begin to understand that they cannot control you simply by pressing the right emotional button. This changes the way people interact with you. They may still disagree with you. They may still dislike you. They may still attempt to test you, but they become more careful because they no longer know exactly what reaction they will receive. You are not predictable in the way an angry person is predictable. You do not automatically attack. You do not automatically defend yourself. You do not automatically chase. You observe first, then decide. That pause between what happens and what you do next is where your power exists. In that pause, you reclaim control. You decide whether the situation deserves your attention attention. You decide whether the person deserves an answer. You decide whether the correct response is a sentence, a boundary, distance, or complete withdrawal. The more often you practice this pause, the less power other people have over your emotional world. Most people believe boundaries are created by words. They think saying, "Don't talk to me like that, don't do that again," or "I won't tolerate this," is enough to make others respect them. But words alone do not create boundaries. A boundary is created by what you do after someone crosses the line. Without action, your boundary is not a boundary. It is only a request, and requests can be ignored by anyone who has no reason to take them seriously. This is where many people lose their authority. They announce consequences they never intend to enforce. They say, "If you do that again, I'm leaving." But when the behavior happens again, they stay. They say, "This is the last time," but then give another chance. They promise to stop answering someone, then respond within seconds. They claim they will walk away, then return the moment the other person gives them a small amount of attention. Over time, people begin to understand something very important. Your words sound powerful, but your behavior has no consequences. People pay attention to patterns. They may forget what you said, but they remember what happened afterward. If disrespect is followed by forgiveness, they learn that disrespect is affordable. If manipulation is followed by more attention, they learn that manipulation works. If betrayal is followed by another opportunity, they learn that your desire to keep them is greater than your standards. This is not always conscious or calculated, but human beings naturally repeat behavior that produces results. A boundary becomes powerful when it is simple, clear, and consistent. You do not need to give a long speech every time someone crosses a line. In fact, the more you explain your boundary, the more opportunities you give people to debate it. You say, "I don't appreciate being spoken to that way." They respond with an excuse. You explain why it hurt you. They argue about your feelings. You clarify your intentions. They change the subject. Suddenly, your boundary has become a negotiation, and the other person is trying to convince you that your own standards are unreasonable. You do not need permission to have standards. You do not need someone to agree that their behavior was disrespectful before you decide to change your access to them. If someone repeatedly speaks to you with contempt, you do not have to keep offering the same level of closeness. If someone constantly wastes your time, you do not have to continue making yourself available. If someone repeatedly breaks your trust, you do not have to keep giving them information that can be used against you. The strongest consequences are often quiet. You do not need to announce, "I am now punishing you." You simply stop offering what the person has proven they do not value. You reduce access, you become less available, you stop sharing personal information, you stop initiating every conversation, you stop explaining yourself. You stop giving endless opportunities to someone who has repeatedly shown you what they do with them. This is not about revenge. Revenge keeps you emotionally connected to the person. You are still thinking about how to hurt them, how to make them regret their actions, and how to prove that you have power. A consequence is different. A consequence is simply the natural result of behavior. If someone treats your trust carelessly, they receive less trust. If someone treats your time carelessly, they receive less of your time. If someone treats your presence as something guaranteed, they discover that your presence is no longer guaranteed. The important thing is consistency. If you enforce a boundary once and abandon it the next time you feel lonely, people will learn that your standards disappear under emotional pressure. They will wait for your anger to fade. They will wait for your loneliness to return. They will wait for you to miss them. Then they will expect the old access to be restored without any real change in their behavior. This is why you must decide what you will tolerate before you become emotionally overwhelmed. When you are calm, you can see patterns clearly. When you are desperate to keep someone, you will create excuses for behavior that you would immediately recognize as unacceptable in someone else. You will tell yourself that they were stressed, confused, angry, or simply having a bad day. One mistake may deserve understanding, but repeated behavior deserves observation. A person who knows that your boundaries are real becomes more careful with you. They understand that crossing a line will change the relationship. They understand that you are not simply making emotional threats during an argument. They understand that when you say enough, your behavior will eventually confirm your words. This creates a form of respect that cannot be produced by shouting, pleading, or demanding, because people learn that access to you depends on how they treat you. There is a difference between being present and being available. Many people confuse the two. They believe that if they want to be respected, they must constantly prove their loyalty, answer every message immediately, explain every absence, and remain accessible no matter how carelessly others treat them. But constant availability can quietly destroy your value. When people know they can reach you at any moment, receive your attention whenever they want, and return to you whenever they become bored or lonely, your presence begins to feel guaranteed. And what feels guaranteed is often treated casually. Your absence, when used correctly, is not a punishment. It is information. It reveals what your presence was providing and whether people truly valued it. If you are always the one initiating conversations, solving problems, offering support, making plans, and repairing conflicts, then your presence may be doing more work than you realize. The moment you stop carrying the entire relationship, the truth begins to appear. Some people will notice immediately. Others will disappear completely. Both reactions tell you something valuable. The mistake many people make is announcing their departure before they actually leave. They say, "You will miss me when I'm gone." They post indirect messages. They make dramatic declarations about cutting people off. They want everyone to know that they are withdrawing. But the moment you announce your absence, you often weaken its effect. You give people time to prepare for it. You turn your departure into a performance. Real distance does not need an announcement. It is felt through changed behavior. You simply stop chasing what no longer reciprocates. You stop sending the message first every time. You stop forcing conversations that have become one-sided. You stop offering your energy to people who only remember you when they need something. You stop explaining why you are less available. You become occupied with your own life, not as a strategy to make someone jealous, but because your life should never have been placed on hold for someone else. This is where many people fail. They withdraw physically but remain emotionally present. They stop messaging someone but constantly check whether that person is noticed. They stop calling but monitor their social media. They claim to have moved on but continue discussing the person with everyone around them. Their body is left but their mind remains trapped. That is not real absence. That is simply silent obsession. True absence begins when you reclaim your attention. You stop asking whether they miss you. You stop wondering what they are thinking. You stop trying to create a reaction. You no longer disappear in order to be chased. You create distance because your energy has better places to go. This distinction is crucial. If your absence is designed only to force someone to return, then they still control you. You are waiting for their reaction before you can feel powerful. But when your absence comes from self-respect, their reaction becomes secondary. People often understand value through contrast. When something is constantly present, its importance can become invisible. A person who always listens may be taken for granted. A person who always forgives may be treated carelessly. A person who always returns may never be feared as a loss. But when access changes, perception changes. The person who once assumed you would always be there may suddenly notice the silence. They may begin to remember the conversations, the support, the attention, and the consistency they previously ignored. You should never use this principle to manipulate someone through childish games. Deliberately ignoring a person to make them anxious is not strength. It is another form of emotional dependence. You are still allowing their reaction to determine your behavior. The purpose of withdrawal is not to make someone suffer. It is to stop allowing someone else's behavior to consume your resources. Your time is a resource. Your attention is a resource. Your emotional energy is a resource. Your presence is a resource. You should not distribute these things equally to everyone. When someone repeatedly demonstrates that they do not value what you offer, the intelligent response is not to offer more in the hope that they will finally appreciate it. The intelligent response is to reduce the supply. This does not mean becoming cold toward everyone. It means becoming selective. You can be warm without being endlessly available. You can be generous without allowing people to exploit you. You can care about someone without making yourself permanently accessible to them. The strongest people are not those who never need anyone. They are those who can care deeply without losing the ability to step back. Your life must be large enough that one person's absence does not destroy your identity. You need work that demands your focus, goals that require your discipline, relationships that are built on mutual respect, and interests that exist independently of anyone's approval. When your entire emotional world revolves around one person, you will tolerate almost anything to keep them close. But when your life has depth, you can allow people to leave without begging them to stay, and this is what changes the way people see you. They realize that your presence is meaningful, but it is not guaranteed. They understand that access to you can be lost through careless behavior. They may not always agree with your decisions, but they recognize that you are not someone who can be held hostage by fear of loneliness. Because you have learned to protect your peace before protecting someone else's access to you, there is a particular kind of weakness that looks like honesty but is actually desperation. It appears when you feel compelled to explain yourself to everyone who questions you. Someone misunderstands your decision and you immediately begin defending your intentions. They question your motives, so you explain them in greater detail. They challenge your character, so you provide evidence of your goodness. They accuse you of something you did not do, and you become determined to prove your innocence. Before long, you are no longer having a conversation. You are standing in a courtroom created by someone else, trying to convince a person who has already decided that you are guilty. The dangerous part is that you may believe more explanation will finally produce understanding. You think that if you choose the right words, provide enough details, and remain patient long enough, the other person will eventually see the truth. Sometimes that works, but there are people who are not confused about you. They are committed to misunderstanding you because misunderstanding gives them a position of power. If they can keep you explaining yourself, they can keep you emotionally engaged, they can keep you responding to their accusations while they continue changing the subject. You must learn to recognize the difference between genuine confusion and deliberate distortion. A person who genuinely wants to understand will listen to your explanation. They may ask questions, but their questions are connected to the subject. They are trying to make sense of what happened. A person who wants control behaves differently. Every answer creates another accusation. Every clarification becomes evidence evidence of something else. You answer one question and they bring up an unrelated event from months ago. You explain that event and suddenly they question your intentions again. The conversation has no destination because understanding was never the goal. When you continue explaining yourself in such situations, you give the other person control over your time and emotional state. They make an accusation and you respond. They make another and you respond again. Soon, your entire interaction is built around their ability to provoke a defense from you. They are no longer required to prove their claims. You have accepted the burden of proving that you are not the person they have decided to imagine. This is why calm detachment is so powerful. You do not need to correct every false opinion. You do not need to force every person to see you accurately. Some people will misunderstand you no matter how carefully you speak because their opinion is serving an emotional purpose. Perhaps they need to make you the villain so they do not have to examine their own behavior. Perhaps they need to believe you are selfish so they can justify taking advantage of you. Perhaps they need to believe you are arrogant because your confidence makes them uncomfortable. If someone has already chosen their version of you, your explanation may not change their mind. It may only give them more material to twist. This is why you must become comfortable with being misunderstood. That does not mean you should never clarify yourself. It means you should not make universal approval a requirement for your peace. There is tremendous freedom in realizing that you do not need to win every person's interpretation of you. You can say what you mean once, you can explain your position clearly, you can correct a genuine misunderstanding. After that, you must observe the response. If the person is interested in understanding, the conversation will move toward clarity. If they are interested in control, the conversation will continue endlessly. At that point, your strongest response may be remarkably simple. You are free to believe that. This sentence does not mean you agree with them. It means you refuse to enter an endless battle over their perception. You are acknowledging their freedom to hold an opinion without surrendering your own identity to it. You are saying, in effect, that their interpretation does not require your emotional participation. The person who cannot tolerate being misunderstood is easy to manipulate. All someone has to do is accuse them of something and they will spend hours defending themselves. All someone has to do is question their character and they will begin performing for approval. All someone has to do is threaten to believe something negative about them and they will become desperate to correct the image. But when you stop needing to control what everyone thinks of you, you become much harder to control. You no longer rush to defend yourself against every accusation. You no longer give unlimited access to your private thoughts simply because someone demands an explanation. You understand that your actions, patterns, and character over time will reveal more about you than any argument ever could. People may criticize your silence. They may call you arrogant because you refuse to argue. They may claim that your unwillingness to explain yourself proves their accusations. Let them. A person committed to misunderstanding you will always find a way to interpret your behavior against you. If you speak, they may call you defensive. If you remain silent, they may call you guilty. If you leave, they may call you afraid. When the game is designed so that every move condemns you, the only winning move is to stop playing. Your responsibility is not to be understood by everyone. Your responsibility is to know who you are. Recognize when a conversation is sincere and refuse to let someone else's accusations become the place where your identity is decided. The more dependent you are on someone, the more power they possess over your emotional state. This is not always obvious at first. You may believe you are simply in love, loyal, or deeply connected, but there is a difference between caring about someone and needing them so completely that the possibility of losing them becomes more frightening than the possibility of losing yourself. When your entire sense of security depends on one person's attention, approval, presence, or affection, you become vulnerable to almost anything they are willing to do. People can sense desperation even when you try to hide it. They notice when you forgive too quickly because you are afraid they will leave. They notice when you accept disrespect because you believe no one else will want you. They notice when you abandon your standards to keep someone close. You may never say, "I need you so badly that I will tolerate anything," but your behavior can communicate it clearly. The more someone realizes that you are terrified of losing them, the more power they gain over your decisions. This is why you must build a life that does not collapse when another person walks away. Your identity cannot be based entirely on a relationship. Your confidence cannot depend completely on someone else's compliments. Your happiness cannot be controlled by whether one person sends a message, returns a call, or gives you attention. The moment your emotional stability becomes dependent on another person's behavior, you have handed them control of your inner world. This does not mean you should become emotionally distant or refuse to care. It means your life must contain more than one source of meaning. You need goals that belong to you, skills that you are developing for yourself, work that challenges you, interests that exist independently of anyone's approval, friendships that do not revolve around a single relationship, a personal mission that continues even when someone disappoints you. The strongest form of independence is not the ability to say, "I need nobody." That is often just another form of insecurity disguised as strength. Real independence means being able to love people without losing your identity inside them. You can value someone's presence without believing that their absence will destroy you. You can miss someone without chasing them. You can feel pain without surrendering surrendering your standards to make the pain disappear. Many people tolerate disrespect because they have made the person disrespecting them too important. They have convinced themselves that losing this one individual would mean losing everything. So they accept the unacceptable. They forgive repeated betrayal. They remain in conversations where they are constantly diminished. They keep offering chances because the fear of loneliness is greater than their desire for peace. But loneliness is not always the worst thing that can happen to you. Sometimes the worst thing is remaining surrounded by people who teach you to abandon yourself. Sometimes the cost of keeping someone is slowly becoming a version of yourself you no longer recognize. You begin to measure every word before speaking. You hide your opinions. You accept behavior that once would have offended you. You become grateful for small amounts of attention because you have forgotten what genuine respect feels like. A strong life gives you choices. When your entire world is built around one person, you have no freedom. Every disagreement feels like a threat. Every distance feels like abandonment. Every conflict becomes something you must immediately repair, even when you were not the one who caused it. But when your life has depth, you can step back and think clearly. You can ask whether the relationship is actually good for you instead of asking only how to prevent it from ending. This is also why personal growth changes the way others treat you. When you develop competence, discipline, and self-respect, you become less willing to accept poor treatment. You no longer need to announce your value because you experience it internally. You know that if someone leaves, you can continue building. If someone rejects you, you can continue improving. If someone disrespects you, you can create distance without believing that your entire future has disappeared. People are often more careful with those who have options. A person who believes they have nowhere else to go may be treated carelessly. A person who knows they can survive without a particular relationship is much harder to control. Their affection becomes a choice rather than a desperate need. Their loyalty becomes meaningful because it is freely given, not forced by fear. The goal is not to become impossible to replace in every person's life. The goal is to stop treating yourself as replaceable in your own. You should not abandon your values, your ambitions, your peace, or your identity simply to remain acceptable to someone else. Your life should be strong enough to continue moving forward even when a relationship ends, a friendship changes, or someone you trusted reveals that they were not who you believed them to be. There is a difference between being powerful and constantly trying to appear powerful. The insecure person announces their strength before anyone is asked about it. They tell people what they are capable of. They warn everyone not to underestimate them. They make promises about what they will do if they are disrespected. They speak loudly about their standards, their connections, their success, and the consequences others will face if they cross them. But the more someone talks about the power they possess, the more people begin to wonder why that power needs so much advertising. Real strength does not need a constant announcement. It is revealed through patterns. A disciplined person does not need to tell everyone they are disciplined because their habits eventually make the statement for them. A confident person does not need to repeatedly announce their confidence because they do not panic when challenged. An independent person does not need to declare that they can walk away because their behavior shows that they are not trapped by fear. The strongest message is often the one you never have to say. This is why you should allow people to underestimate you. Many people are desperate to be recognized as strong. They want everyone to know that they are intelligent, important, connected, and capable. They correct every person who misunderstands them. They reveal every achievement. They make sure everyone knows what they could do if they wanted to. But this constant display creates predictability. People begin to understand your need for recognition, and once they understand that need, they can use it against you. If someone knows you cannot tolerate being underestimated, all they have to do is question your ability. You will immediately rush to prove yourself. If they know you cannot tolerate being ignored, they can withdraw attention and make you chase it. If they know you need everyone to acknowledge your importance, they can withhold approval and watch you work for it. Your need to be recognized becomes a leash. The person who is comfortable being underestimated is far more difficult to manipulate. They do not need to correct every false impression. They do not need to reveal everything they know. They do not need to explain every plan before acting on it. They understand that perception is temporary. While results are difficult to argue with, this does not mean you should pretend to be weak or deliberately deceive people. It means you should stop wasting energy trying to control every opinion about you. Let people think what they want. Let them underestimate your discipline. Let them assume you are less capable than you are. Let them believe you are harmless if that is what they choose to believe. You do not need to interrupt their assumptions before their assumptions have had time to reveal themselves. There is a strategic advantage in silence. When you speak less about your intentions, people have less information to use against you. When you announce every plan, you invite opinions before you have produced results. People may discourage you, mock you, or attempt to interfere. Sometimes the best way to protect an idea is to let it grow privately until it becomes strong enough to stand on its own. The same principle applies to conflict. When someone disrespects you, you do not need to immediately announce everything you are going to do. You do not need to threaten them with consequences. You do not need to tell them how much power you have. You simply observe, make a decision, and act when necessary. The person who constantly threatens is often less frightening than the person who says little and changes their behavior without warning. There is also a deeper strength in refusing to prove yourself. When someone challenges your worth, you may feel an instinctive desire to demonstrate that they are wrong. But ask yourself why their opinion has such authority over you. If you know what you can do, why must a stranger, rival, or disrespectful person validate it? The need to prove yourself suggests that their judgment has become more important than your own knowledge of who you are. You do not need to win every argument because your life is not a courtroom. You do not need to answer every insult because your character is not determined by the loudest person in the room. You do not need to display every strength because strength that is constantly displayed becomes ordinary. Let your consistency speak. Let your discipline become visible through your results. Let your boundaries become clear through your actions. Let your calmness reveal that you are not easily controlled. Let people discover over time that the person they underestimated was not weak, but simply uninterested in performing strength for an audience. The most powerful person in the room is often not the loudest person. It is the person who does not need to be loud to be taken seriously. When you stop announcing your strength, stop chasing recognition, and stop trying to convince everyone that you should not be underestimated, your actions begin to carry a different weight. People start paying attention not to what you claim you can do, but to what you consistently do. And eventually, the people who once believed you were easy to dismiss discover that they made a dangerous mistake. They confused your silence with weakness, your patience with helplessness, and your calmness with the absence of power. The moment you no longer need to announce your strength is often the moment others begin to feel it.